Mikel Arteta is now very much the manager who's got his feet under the table at Arsenal, and things are beginning to look like there's a bit more momentum within this Arsenal side, a little bit more belief, and maybe also quashing some of those fears that in the past they had. In this season, they need to prove to themselves, but also others in the Premier League, that they're worthy of being in that top four, worthy of being in those very high echelon positions of, Champions League contender, all that sort of thing. That contending for the Champions League might still be a few years off. But in terms of showing that the squad is progressing, well, that's what they did tonight. And I think there has been progression. There was always the opportunity for Palace to try to rain on the parade and, break up the party that's going on at Arsenal. Palace didn't have an exceptional pre-season, but when I did watch them play, and I did watch them play a few times, they did look like a side that knew at least what they were doing, trying to get forward in the right way. And tonight they'll consider themselves unlucky. But the whole point with Arsenal was there was great momentum coming in. There were a whole load of times in pre-season where there was just so much backing for Mikel Arteta. People loved the shapes they were making. They loved the positions people were playing in. They loved the space that the side had. And in the first half, there were twinkle toes in there. There was space, there was pressing, there were all sorts of things. But you kind of got what you expected. And I expected that there would be players who weren't quite up to the full 90 of fitness here because they're still trying to work their way into that. There were players out there who at times were making passes where you're like, oh, that wasn't quite right. And also, I felt like at times Palace actually really cancelled out Arsenal quite nicely tonight and actually broke on them a couple of times to not devastating effect, but to an effect. And Arsenal could have been devastated if it was another side who broke more efficiently and more effectively, maybe with players who were more gelled together or just more deadly side in general. So there are still some issues to flag around this Arsenal side. But on the other side, yes, they got through a very difficult game here where it was the first real competitive match they're going to play in quite a while. And so with that comes different kind of nerves, different kind of feelings away from home at Crystal Palace. Really difficult ground to go to, Crystal Palace. And Selhurst Park is that kind of place where it's a cauldron of atmosphere. They think they can try and use that atmosphere to turn everything against you. And I'm sure that when things are only 1-0 up and you hear a home crowd chanting against you, there is something which says to Arsenal, okay, in the past, X has happened. We don't want the same to go on now. Now, what I was exceptionally impressed with tonight with the personnel at Arsenal, I was really impressed with the integration of the new personnel. Zinchenko has given that left side even more dynamism and technical ability than Tierney was already giving it last season. And Tierney's fantastic. But I think Zinchenko coming in is a really good shot in the arm for the Arsenal side, basically saying, we're doubling up in a couple of positions here. We can rotate people around in different positions. Zinchenko might be a bit more advanced and possibly play a slightly more controlling position than the one that Tierney plays. And then at the same time, you've also got Gabriel Jesus up front, who is not pressing in the same way as you'd expect like a Liverpool to press, but he was intercepting the ball quite a lot, getting into difficult spaces, shutting down players very quickly, and also just always one thing I love about him is on a player's blind side, he always seems to be there coming in and trying to take the ball. And there's almost a basketball style to what he does, where he's trying to get in and amongst it, trying to stop the passing lanes, trying to not tap the ball out of your hands, but get it away from your feet. And it's that sort of thing where you think, it's that level of intensity, that level of desire that I think people have questioned with Arsenal in the past before, where they've said things like, well, this Arsenal team is the mentality is the issue. And I get it, like we're early on in the season here, that probably isn't the point where your team's likely to break. But if your side is showing already that they aren't particularly stable and there are some issues within the team and there doesn't seem to be much cohesion, there does seem to be a bit of a breakdown, people seem to be learning things, then that's a problem at some point. This Arsenal side seems to have a very clear MO, great idea of what they're trying to achieve, and a really clear vision around everything that seems to be going on at Arsenal right now. Outside of that, I think the midfield was extremely solid. I actually think Partey had a really good game, considering a lot of the rumours that are surrounding him online at the moment. And I think Xhaka also had a really solid game. There were times where they sort of got in their own way, if you like. So Ramsdale passed it out and it hit one of the Crystal Palace players. On TV, it looked like it was going to sail back up and over him and into the goal. But it didn't. It was nowhere near. And it was just a weird little rebound. There were a couple of times where Palace broke, and Palace were clearly trying to play that, using their pace, using their the short, incisive passing and the carrying the ball, frankly, that so many of their players seem very good at, that I think Palace are going to be known for this season. And it kind of worked, actually. There was one time where Eze got in based on the back of them, intercepting the ball, getting in Saha in the middle, and just this, it split the centre-back and the right-back perfectly. And I just thought, if he finishes this changes the game. It would have been 1-1 at that point, and Eze's wheeling away, Arsenal looking a little bit confused. The first goal, by the way, is also clearly an exploitation of something that Arsenal have done the research on. The goal that put them 1-0 up was get Zinchenko back, get him to head it back in, and that's how we exploit their poor positioning on corners, etc. I don't know if that's something that plagued Crystal Palace a lot last season. I'd be interested to know what Palace fans say about that on the back end. But again, it shows good execution from Arsenal and a positive briefing from Arsenal's guys. And I think around that, you can see even further that Arsenal knew the spaces they were trying to exploit very early on. And in many ways, Palace probably played into their hands quite a bit. I also like the movement, the patterns, the interchange, and the short, sharp passing. Sometimes it didn't work out, but sometimes when it does work out for Arsenal, it's beautiful and they're such a pleasure to watch. On the other side of that, all that beautiful passing amassed to one goal from a corner in the first half. So it didn't actually come to anything from at least a tangible position they'd worked for themselves. And I get it, like, you know, it's always pressure. The pressure's always building on a side and you want to maximize that pressure. And a corner is just as good for maximizing that pressure as any other goal. But in many ways, like, you also want to demoralize them. You want to show that your tactics are the superior ones. And sides will almost take solace sometimes from conceding from a corner. But at the same time, if it feels like they're under the cosh, this is exactly what you want to do as Arsenal. On the other side of that, then in the second half, everyone started to get quite tired. You felt that Palace had a little bit more in the tank because they hadn't been doing as much of that running, they hadn't been doing as much of the breaking, and actually most of their players are probably trained in, you know, get that sprint out, carry the ball at your feet, go out wide, make sure you don't use too much energy, focus on yourself, don't do too much defending, and we're just going to break on these guys. I'm not saying Zaha doesn't work hard, I think he does. And you began to have that tumultuous moment where you go, is it going to break down for Arteta here? Is there a level of pressure that these guys will crack under? Because there were a couple of chances, but never anything I felt clear-cut enough, apart from the Eze chance where he really put it straight at the goalkeeper, where I thought that is where Arsenal fall apart this season. In fact, they actually look quite solid at the back. Playing the two in front with Xhaka and Partey works quite nicely. And then Odegaard, their new captain, just ahead of that. He's not pulling the strings in a weird way. Like, he's not the only fulcrum player there. There are plenty of players where they become the fulcrum of the attack. Saka, I've not even mentioned Martinelli yet, and I thought he was mesmerising at times tonight. But it's good just to see Odegaard just drifting around. Remember though, he won't get that much space in other Premier League games against other top sides, and that's where Arsenal need to get points. So there's plenty to take away. There's plenty to say, hey, Arsenal aren't quite over the line yet. There's not a, we don't think, hey, they have arrived now. This was a great way to put a marker down in the sand and say it's the minimum I expect from Arsenal this season in terms of application, in terms of energy, in terms of fitness as well. It can only really go up from here. Between now and the World Cup, they'll probably be working themselves into a point of fitness. You kind of want to grind out things before the World Cup. I'd imagine that Arteta's thinking, okay, I'm going to lose a couple of guys, but I'm also going to have a core squad that I can train here, and I'm going to have a set of people that know what we're going to do in the second half of the season and hit the ground running after that. So there's a lot to take from this game. I think Arsenal will evolve over the season. A real challenge for them, by the way, when they are busy evolving is fitness and energy out on the pitch. That will go over the season. Those twinkle toes, those legs will get a little bit heavier. Those tricks that they had may not work as much because players will know what they're going to go up against. People will know and have watched elements of their game, and that won't be quite as surprising for the likes of X, Y, Z, whoever they're playing at that point. So that's going to be the challenge, the marathon of this. It's great in that first half to see them so enthusiastic, loving playing their football, and I enjoy watching Mikel Arteta's football. It's very apex. But outside of that, that was never what we levelled at Arsenal. That was never the criticism, if you like, from last season. So I'm not saying they're worthy of criticism this season, but we are still waiting for those questions to be answered. And I think in many ways, they're answering a lot of those questions because the ceiling seems to have gone higher with Gabriel Jesus, with Zinchenko, watching how good physically Partey looks, watching how Xhaka seems a lot calmer alongside Partey, watching Odegaard's calmness in the attack. All those things seem to be upgrades, and I've barely even mentioned the back line. Two really accomplished centre-backs, a left-back that they're rotating in and out, and obviously Ben White on the other side. There's a lot of pushing things around there. One thing I haven't even mentioned about the defence yet is the fact that now you can build from that back with the system that's based around two solid central defenders and a backline that you can completely rely on, and they know the system, they know what they're trying to build towards. There's some very clear balls out to the wing to try and stretch the opposition out. There's a very clear tactic there, but also two really confident centre-backs who look like they're working up a really good partnership. It's going to be interesting. There were times where they were run out, sure, and I think you can worry any centre-back partner at some point. But the point is tonight they look way more solid than they have in previous years. Very rarely in the game did I think they look vulnerable here. So I am impressed with Arsenal, but I think these questions from a lot of the people who doubt Arteta will not stop until the end of the season. Because people are going to go, well, has he got the Champions League yet? Does he deserve this? They've spent a lot of money. For instance, there was this graphic on, I think it would have been Premier League TV, because it wasn't the Sky Sports graphic, was it? Where they basically said, net spend since Arteta arrived. Well, of course his net spend is going to be higher. They had a much less valuable squad when he arrived, and they've had to turn over that squad quite quickly in order to accommodate him and everything else. And also they had to bring in quality players. Other sides haven't had to do the same. So there is a bit of a narrative that some media places are building up, and maybe a bit of a false narrative based on some weird stats. Sure, he has spent money. I think that money spend is very visible now in the quality of the side. But he has to apply it now, and I get it. Like, people are saying, don't get a Champions League, it'll be underachievement this season. I'm inclined to agree. I still think he'll get more time, even if they don't know, because they believe in the project. They believe in a young coach, and they believe in someone who is laying down a foundation of the importance of more than just what is going out on the pitch out there. And that's going to be key for Arsenal this season. Keeping their heads, dialing out the rest of that noise, and the doubters, all those kind of things, well, they turn in the end. There is the big challenge, of course, when they do get tired from playing in Europe and whatever, that they have to keep that going. Be interesting to see what they do. I think Arsenal's goal this season is get into that top four. Europa League shouldn't really matter. FA Cup, be lovely to win a piece of silverware, but I've already got that on my mantelpiece. If it's on your mantelpiece, you've got a huge mantelpiece, but it's already on my mantelpiece, says Arteta. So there's a long-term goal here, and you can sort of see that in the way they play. You can see the calmness they play with and the assuredness. I like that as well. Credit to Palace, I actually thought they were really good. I think Palace will come away with a lot this season. But what Arteta is doing is about the long term here. And I think a lot of Arsenal fans will be invested after seeing that they didn't really have to break out of maybe second or third gear tonight in order to win this game. So a decent, obviously Saka and the pressure paid off for them in the end. Wasn't a great goal for them. The criticism will maybe be they didn't really score any goals from open play, apart from an own goal, which isn't really theirs in that sense, but there was pressure from it. And obviously, the knockback cross, that's not open play, that's a set piece. So there will be criticism. I think they look very dangerous, but at times I've also felt like they could have offered more. There may be games where they get frustrated. I want to see what happens when they get challenged. It's when they're under pressure and when they get challenged, what do they do then? Let me know in the comments below what you took from tonight's game. I'll be interested to see what you're thinking. Loads more sort of overall opinions rather than just a simple match review coming up for you guys this season. But I hope you really enjoy it. I hope you hit subscribe. We're looking for 40 to 50k within the next couple of weeks, and then on to 100k by the World Cup. But let's see if that's possible. I might be dreaming in the sky there, but let's see. 37k I think we hit today. So thank you very much, guys, for hitting subscribe, trying to build a small community here and just make some good football content. So we'll see you in a little while. Much love.